What the Organic Center does is research on communication of science behind organic food and farming. So how many of you here think that organic is better for us, for the environment, etc.? How many of you feel like it is? Yes. Okay, great. So a lot of people feel that organic is better than pesticide-laden GMOs. But what some people don't know is that there is a lot of hard science backing up that feeling that you have in your heart that you know is true. So unfortunately, science is not friendly. It doesn't connect with the public, and our society is set up in this way that people grow up feeling alienated from science. And even if people are interested in science, on the off chance that you meet someone who actually is interested in science, it isn't available to them. So science gets published in scientific journals that are extremely expensive to get access to, or even if you do get access to them, they're written in so much technical jargon that it's almost like reading a different language. So that's where I step in. I try and bridge the gap between cold science and the public, bringing the science to the people who need to hear about the research results to make decisions in their everyday lives. And not only does the Organic Center do its own research, but I also take scientific articles that get published from around the world on basically a daily basis, and I talk to the researchers who are doing the science, and then I communicate that to the public using tools that they can connect with. So things like non-technical summaries or interviews with scientists, social media posts, infographics, videos, etc. So what I'm really hoping to do is break down the barriers that people construct that keep them from hearing about or being interested in scientific studies or scientific facts. And one of the reasons that I'm so passionate about my job is that I used to be one of those people who were alienated by science. I was not always the nerd that you now see before you. And it wasn't that I didn't care about science, I just couldn't connect. I saw myself as separate from the environmental community, and it didn't even occur to me that I could make a difference. I basically didn't have any role models that I could connect with. So I looked at people who were working towards sustainability, and it was like movie stars and white men in lab coats, basically people who didn't look like me, talk like me, or come from a community like mine. They were separate, something that I wasn't a part of. And I actually remember I think it was in high school, I had an environmental science teacher who, the first day of class, I hated science, by the way, growing up. The first day of class, she got up and looked at us and was like, I know, a bunch of you hate science. And I was like, yeah, that's me. And she was like, I used to be like you. I used to hate science, and now I love it. And I'm a science teacher, and I have this very clear memory looking at her and thinking, that is never gonna happen to me. So I went to college intending to major in art, and I majored in art for my first 3 years. I focused on painting, drawing, fashion design, without a single thought for the environment. I mean, what does the environment have to do with art? But I was lucky. My family's, sorry. Okay. My family's from Argentina, and the winter of my junior year, I went down to visit them, and I spent a month with my great aunt Nita. And she was teaching painting at the time at a local university, so we instantly bonded over art. But then I started learning more about her history, and she had only picked up art later in life. She was actually trained in chemistry. And she got a PhD in chemistry in the 1940s when women simply were not getting science degrees. I mean, there aren't that many women getting PhDs in chemistry now, let alone back in the 40s, especially not in Argentina, which is a pretty machismo country. And to top it off, she was Jewish, so she had to navigate a severely anti-Semitic government. So hearing her story made me realize that people like me, women, even young women without much experience, could do science. And it was kind of this life-changing moment for me. She also told me something that should have made sense to me, intuitive, but I had just never thought about it, that art and the environment are linked. Art is this tool that you can use to solve any problem, none greater than the inspiration for most art, which is the environment. So I went back to college and decided to take the hardest class I could possibly think of to honor her, which was chemistry. And the first day, the professor walked into the room, and he had an Argentine accent, and it just blew me away. It was the first Argentine experience that I'd had in the United States that really connected with me, and I just felt like I was surrounded by my family, like I belonged. So basically, after having someone that I could connect to as a mentor, it made me feel like I might be able to fit in, like I might be able to contribute. So I kept taking science classes. And I used the creativity from my art background to ask new, novel science questions. And I just became more and more inspired by the science side of the environment. And I was also able to use my art as a tool for environmental communication to reach people who might not come from backgrounds where environmental interaction was the norm. So basically, we desperately need environmental leaders and role models for people who weren't born into this community, people like me. And that's where you come in. You're making a difference right now. So the organizations that you're involved with, the projects that you're doing, all the things that brought you here today are making a difference right now. But in addition to what you're doing to improve the world right now, you're making a long-term contribution to the environmental community by inspiring others, people who need role models like you to get involved. And if I had known someone like you, if I had had one friend or mentor like you, it might not have taken me so long to get involved in environmental science. And like I said, I got lucky. If I hadn't happened to have a family member who could make me feel like a part of the community, I sure wouldn't be here today. So you're all way ahead of the game. The fact that you're here, that you're fighting for a more sustainable system puts you worlds ahead of most people. And with that head start, you're going to be able to become the leaders that will guide us to an environmental future. I'm so glad you're out there. Now, before I finish, I want to tell you something that I wish someone had told me when I got started. You are not always going to feel like you belong. Some days you're going to feel like you tricked everyone into thinking that you're part of the environmental community. You're going to think you don't know enough or you don't have enough experience, and it's only a matter of time before people figure it out. Well, everyone feels like that sometimes. So just acknowledge that feeling, realize that it's there, and then take it for what it is, a feeling, not reality. It's so common, in fact, that there's a term for it, the imposter syndrome. I recommend that you look it up, because once I looked it up, I was like, oh wow, everyone feels like this? Especially in graduate school, when I was coming from an art background into this heavy science community and did not know what I was doing there. So it took me way too long to realize that half of the people I was interacting with felt the exact same way that I do about perhaps not belonging. And after opening up and talking about it and realizing what was going on, I developed a lot more confidence about my place in my role and was able to take initiative in a way that I didn't before. So keep up the good work. You're gonna get obstacles thrown in front of you. You're gonna feel like you don't belong, like what you're doing isn't making a big enough difference, but just remember that you are needed. You're doing really important work, and without you, without people like you, none of the people who are gonna be speaking today would be here. So thank you so much.